Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? You'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a category that we've made up to cause arguments. For example, this week we're looking for the best game featuring celebrities from the 90s. This is, of course, inspired by crime boss Rockay City, which is, by all accounts, a terrible heist simulator whose signature feature is its cast of big 90s actors like Michael Madsen and Chuck Norris, personalities whose best days are well behind them and are now doomed to pay the bills by doing less good things that only serve to remind their dwindling fan bases of previous triumphs that they'll never repeat. I'm joined today by Tom Orry.
Hello.
And Alex Donaldson. Hello. And Kelsey Rayner.
Hi.
So games featuring 90s personalities, specifically 90s personalities.
I was like, for instance, Chuck Norris is an 80s personality, surely, when you said that example.
Yeah, all right, yes, but
that was the thing that was hard about this category, was that when I started to think about it and look it up, everyone that I was thinking of was an 80s personality, technically. I'm there on IMDb opening up people's pages to see when their careers took off, to see how I could define them.
But Chuck Norris was an 80s personality, but wasn't he like a late 90s meme?
I suppose he was a late 90s meme, but obviously people, when he was big on telly and stuff, right? He was...
Did they have memes? Did they have memes in the 90s?
Yeah, they just didn't call them memes.
Chuck Norris, 60s actually, 60s and 70s. Yeah.
Jesus.
Of course, he was the bad guy in Where the Dragon. So this whole category is blown apart now. Sorry.
He was in Walker, Texas Ranger, wasn't
he? I think that's the big thing, right? That's the...
But isn't that a 90s show? Hang on.
This is not the Chuck Norris podcast, is it?
Well, he was in The Wrecking Crew. He was in Where the Dragon. He was in loads of fucking. That
guy's going to be posting a review again, Jim. About
Walker, Texas Ranger, 1993 to 2001. I would.
Okay, so sort of.
That counts.
Yeah.
But that's like that was the film star getting his TV show.
Yeah, but it still made him a 90s celebrity. Listen, let's not get bogged down in Chuck Norris's career.
It's like if I picked Oblivion for Patrick Stewart and then argued that Star Trek didn't matter because then he was in X-Men.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people would try and make that argument though. All right, okay. So first of all, I want to hear from Alex. Let's.
Will I ever go first, Jim? Will you ever let me go first?
No.
I had a lot of thoughts about this, like I say, and there were a lot of ones where I was like, damn, it doesn't quite fit because they came up in the 80s, and even things like, initially for half a second I was like, oh, Emma Stone's in Sleeping Dogs, and then I realised she was a child in the 90s and was not on TV. Well, she was actually, because she was on Disney Channel and stuff, but I wouldn't call her a 90s star. And I was thinking, and then I actually had another choice, which I think I can say because I don't think anyone else will pick it, which for a long time I was going to say NBA Jam.
Yeah.
Because, of course, NBA Jam has the unlockable characters, and it has, in many ways, the ultimate 90s celebrities unlockable in that it has Bill Clinton and Hillary unlockable in it. But this other game jumped into my head and I couldn't go back. Which that is Def Jam Fight for New York. You could pick any of the Def Jam games, really, but Fight for New York is the best one.
Can I just jog my memory here? Is this the second appearance of Fight for NY on this podcast? Didn't Connor try to do
at least?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a great game and it's an underrated game. So it's one of those things. This is one of those games that always comes up when people say what should come back. Because they did they do 4 Def Jam games? If you don't count the karaoke one, which was excellent. Because they did Vendetta, Fight for New York, and sort of an expansion of Fight for New York, and Icon. Icon was like the 360 era one that completely fucked it up. Completely had a really clever idea of like, it's going to be a fighting game, but your hits have to land to the beat of the to the BPM of the track that's playing. But it just sort of sucked. But Fight for New York is the serious pinnacle. These games were made by Aki Corporation, the company that made like all those classic era wrestling games, like all the WCW versus NWO, the WrestleMania like games around 2000, all that sort of stuff. They made those. No Mercy, they made that. So like these are the guys, right? And you know, I always wonder how the idea for Def Jam came about, because it's such like a weird thing, because they made the original one as well. But yeah, it's just like, why don't we get the wrestling guys to make a fighting game that stars rappers? And so as a result, you can sort of take your pick of 90s celebrities in this. There's Flavor Flav is in it, Ludacris is in it, Method Man is in it, Redman, obviously. If you got Method Man, you got to have Redman. You got Ice-T, you got Snoop, you got Sean Paul, you got Exhibit, you got Carmen Electra, Lil' Kim, yeah.
I reckon
you got
90s
Busta Rhymes.
rappers, I reckon there is a lot of not crossover, but like I guess a sort of crossover in terms of like disciplines and how you play that game. It like how you be a rapper, how you be a celebrity in that world. There's a lot of like, it is a bit like wrestling, isn't it? It's like, you know, because they have these big sort of alter egos, these big personalities. They have feuds, some of which are engineered. It's just like, you know, people actually get shot, but like it's fair, like everything's wrestling essentially.
It's that funny thing, but it's funny because you could make this game and try and make it quite serious, which I think is the mistake that the 360 era one did. But this is just fun and stupid. And it's very much based on that wrestling engine, so you can totally get pipes and bats and shovels and probably steel chairs and stuff. And it's just it's so weird. Like, you look at the cast of this, and it's like, it's not necessarily just music people, you know. So yeah, you've got Warren G and the guys I mentioned earlier, but yeah, you also have Danny Trejo's in it, which I would categorize him as a 90s star. He's one of those people. He was in a couple of 80s films, but the 90s was when he became a name. So you can
apparently
sort of
has just a range of taco stores now in LA.
So much.
I think he owns a bunch of restaurants in LA as well.
He did the Far Cry 6 DLC, right?
Yeah. Just got a finger in every pie. I respect it.
But that's why I sort of felt like I had to pick this, because I was like, well, there's so many 90s stars in it for a start, but also I think you'd struggle to make a game with a cast this large anymore.
Did you consider trying to like crowbar 50 Cent Blood in the Sand into this?
Well, I did look up when Get Rich or Die Trying was released, but it was too late. But it's just, and yeah, 50 Cent would absolutely be in a modern, which it shows where 50 Cent's career sort of falls into it, actually, because this was made in 2004 and 50's not in it. Because there is a lot, although it's a Def Jam game, there's a lot of rappers that aren't on Def Jam in this. Yeah. Like Snoop. So, yeah, but they just absolutely had, you know, they've got a good number of these guys are 80s guys as well, but a good number of them are 90s guys. And I think you would struggle to have this cast now. A lot of the people in this have appeared in games. So, like I said, Danny Trejo's been in games. Snoop's been in everything from Tekken to... Because Snoop was one of those ones where I thought about... I literally just looked up what Snoop had been in.
Snoop's been in Call of Duty.
Yeah.
He's been in COD, he's been in Tekken, he was in True Crime Streets of LA. Like... I think the LA one, but he was in one of them.
Adverts, like, he'll just do anything. I think, once again,
to be fair, those Just Eat adverts, you know, the really weird thing about those Just Eat adverts, Just Eat is called a different thing in every country. Yeah. And so he and Katy Perry recorded versions of those ads that are all the different names. Yeah. Like, it's called Menu Log in Australia. So there is a version of that where Snoop is rapping about Menu Log as opposed to Just Eat, which is a lot less catchy. But yeah, I looked it up, and Snoop had been in, like, he was in Tekken Tag, he was in Call of Duty, he was in Madden like 3 years in a row. Not his music, he was in Madden as a playable character 3 years in a row.
Well, he was just like on the pitch. You could make him.
No, you could sign him to a team, I think. Like as a weird unlockable.
Nice. All right.
So yeah, I was just like, it had to be this, and it's just such an amazing game as well.
I can't remember if Connor won it with Def Jam NY, but we'll see. It'd be interesting if he did. Okay, Kelsey, what have you got for us?
I've picked one. It was the first game that came to mind, and I'm now realizing that there's issues with it, but it's fine. I picked the Herbs Sims in the City, specifically the console version, not the handheld version.
Yeah.
The 90 stars that star in that are the Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah.
And I had to mention it because it's one of those things that even the people that I know who have played the Herbs, which aren't many, just did not realise that the Black Eyed Peas had an entire soundtrack translated to Simlish for this game, which I just think is ridiculous, but go off. And then on top of that, the actual console version of the game sees you interacting with the Black Eyed Peas in game. You start out by trying to enter this nightclub in which some guy says, your dance moves aren't good enough, you can't come in. But then will.i.am comes to save the day, helps us get into this club, introduces us to the most popular person in Sim City, and then it all kind of goes downhill from there, and we have to fight a bunch of bad guys. But yeah, we get to dance with Fergie and will.i.am and Taboo and the other one.
When were they
whose
popular?
Name I can't remember.
When were they popular?
They were founded in 1995.
Yeah.
Right. Were they celebrities then? Or?
Well, they got onto the Billworth soundtrack. So, like...
Yeah, they did have fame.
Yeah, they were hanging out with, like, ODB and all that. So
arguably, they probably didn't reach the peak of their fame until Fergie joined in 2003, I think.
Arguably, that's a good argument.
But as James mentioned, they were big enough to get on the Bulworth soundtrack in 1998.
Yeah.
So I reckon
the Black Eyed Peas, I reckon it's one of those things where they were way bigger in America, like the wave, like they were famous in America before they kind of hit.
Yeah, they kind of hit international acclaim after that third album.
Yeah.
With all the big songs. But they were added to that game because EA basically wanted to make they wanted to make the Herbs this more like popular spin-off like The Sims was to SimCity. That didn't work. And then eventually they were meant to port the game to PC as well. And obviously when the game wasn't as successful as they thought, they actually turned that PC port into what became The Sims 2. And that kind of makes me sad because the Herbs was good. It would have been good to see them do more silly things with The Sims.
Well, that's interesting.
Like they used to.
So the Herbs was like a spin-off of the original Sims. I thought that came a bit later. Okay, all right, cool. Because like that's weird. Because I remember like the Sims 2. Every Sims game has started with like a really reduced feature set, isn't it? And then they've had to kind of like patch stuff in. Like, didn't the last game not have swimming pools until like a year in or something?
Probably.
It's been this ridiculous. Now they've got there's this new one. Was it Life by You? That's kind of...
That is made by the guy who I think he used to do stuff with the Sims and Second Life, and now he's trying to make this whole Life by You thing, which he says is going to give people a lot more sort of customization options than the Sims does, and it has like these real-time conversations, which to me feels odd. I just wish that we could have a Sims-style game that brings back these goofy stories again, like the earlier Sims games did. The Herbs is like the perfect representation of that, but obviously Black Eyed Peas were not popular enough to get that game as many sales as EA wanted.
Certainly not popular enough in the 90s. I mean,
not even will.i.am could get the Herbs off the ground as a franchise.
I do agree. It's a shame that The Sims doesn't do more spin-offy sort of stuff. Like the one I always think about is The Sims Medieval, which was like the Sims crossed with an RPG.
I think that's come up before. It's like The Sims Oblivion, isn't it?
Basically, yeah, and yeah. I don't remember which one it was, but there was like a console Sims spin-off. It might have been the Herbs, or maybe it was.
I was going to say, isn't that the Herbs? Yeah.
On GBA, I specifically remember, and I remember quite enjoying it.
The Herbs also had a handheld version, but the handheld version didn't have Black Eyed Peas, if I remember correctly, and that was for DS and Game Boy. Still a good game, but...
Was it called The Herbs in America?
I don't know.
Is it called The Herbs? Like, so, and nobody in the US was like, what, you mean like oregano?
Herbs, spelt with a Z.
Sorry, that's a terrible joke.
It was a sequel. It was a sequel to The Sims Busting Out, which I think was the GBA title.
It was called The Herbs
title.
Sims in the City as well, which sort of made it a bit obvious. Like, you have the subtitle to make absolutely clear Herbs refers to city.
Can I ask as well, because I'm fascinated by The Sims, but I don't know much about it beyond the first game, because I was obsessed with that when I was a kid. But the Herbs, what was the gameplay like? Was it like missions and stuff, or
so you still had your own needs to like take care of, as you do with any Sims game, but the actual gameplay saw you basically when you befriend this popular guy, he's like, oh, will you get me some secret parts for my secret machine that have gone missing? So you have to go to all these districts around the city and befriend all these different sort of groups in society, all like generic stereotypes, befriend them, beat up their big leaders, retrieve these secret parts, and then eventually Darius gives you his penthouse to say thanks.
So it's like a real simulation of urban life.
Yeah, that's what it was strange. It wasn't like The Sims is now, where you do very much make your own stories. You were just delving into the stories of these other people and carrying
It's like a non-violent GTA.
I was legit to say, it sounds like GTA.
It was fun.
Because it's all about building your rep. It's all about building your rep up, isn't it? And like,
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's hear from Tom. What have you got for us? I mean, you'll be well versed in 90s celebrities because you were like 40
I was thinking
in the 90s.
I was thinking about like who the biggest celebrity. I was trying to go with best game and biggest celebrity.
Yeah, this is Football Manager again.
I was looking for Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is a big deal. Had a load of big films in the 90s, and I looked through. I don't think he's been in a game, even though they've done like Toy Story games. I think it was his brother or someone that did the voices.
His brother does Kingdom Hearts, definitely, because he was at Kingdom Hearts press event.
So I couldn't. Yeah. Tom Hanks I thought was perfect, but no, that was out. And I was thinking about Playground. What were people into? And like Michael Myers and like Wayne's World stuff, and I don't know, Bill and Ted. So I thought maybe we could go.
One of the sort of SNES platformers, or
even Keanu's in like Cyberpunk, right? So that had been a big. I
did think about this.
I wondered if he's actually a bigger deal now. So kind of it isn't really fair because he's like he was a big deal, but he's like a superstar now, right? And he wasn't such a big deal in the 90s.
I just think The Matrix is the turning point there, right? It's like yes, he was in Speed and he was in Bill and Ted and stuff, but he's the Matrix guy, right?
He was well known in the 90s.
But maybe I should have gone this.
Matrix 1 was 99, actually.
Yeah, it was 99,
Then 2 and 3 were 2001.
I should have gone Keanu.
Keanu was like very well known in the 90s, but he wasn't regarded as a good actor or any kind of artist. People just thought he was a shit actor from that.
But I didn't go with that either. I was thinking back to Playground. What were the kids into? As I was a child in the 90s, Jim.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, the big thing on TV at the time, particularly for certain, like in the UK, was Football Italia on Channel 4, right? That was a big deal in the 90s. It really was a big deal. Because not many people had Sky and stuff, so you watched Italian football on the weekend.
Yeah.
And in the mid to late 90s, one of the biggest players was Zinedine Zidane, who played for Juventus, right? And people at my school had Zidane shirts. Like, he was a big deal. Before he met Real Madrid, this was like, he was still a big deal then. One of the best players of all time. Yeah. And later in life, he became a manager. For a few teams, but Real Madrid in particular. And as a manager, he appears in multiple Football Manager games as the manager of Real Madrid. So the celebrity is Zinedine Zidane, who is one of the biggest footballers of all time in terms of status. And he's also in one of the best game series of all time, Football Manager.
Yeah, I mean...
Can you give us a specific, it's got to be...
2021.
Football Manager 2021
or 21, whatever it's called.
Football Manager 21. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, we've got just watching Donaldson's face just sinking as he succumbed to the inevitability of it. Started checking emails. All right. Okay.
That's just really what I started doing. As soon as I realised where it was going, I was like, gonna see if Nintendo's replied to my email.
We're gonna cut to an ad break and then we'll come back. I don't know, but I know Donaldson hates it, but I'm really loving the football manager stint.
It takes quite a lot of effort to get this to work.
The football manager streak. All right, okay. So I don't think there is a single bad game here. Do we have to judge it on the quality of the celebrity?
The way I see it, right? I focus on one celebrity.
Yeah.
And the others have gone like, here's a handful of celebrities. Which is, I'm not sure if that's quite playing fair, is it?
Kelsey's gone, here's a band. So that's a handful of celebrities.
My star is Will.i.am.
Yeah.
Forget about Black Eyed Peas. I'm talking about Will.i.am only.
But
Will.i.am,
also,
okay.
like, when was he actually a big deal? Like,
he's always been a big deal. It's Will.i.am.
I don't know. I think you need to think about that, Jim, quite carefully.
I feel like the Black Eyed Peas were very up and coming in the 90s. I don't know if they count as 90s celebrities, but I think it's up for debate, especially depending on where you were in the world in the late 90s.
If you'd
and they said
them,
they were on the Billworth soundtrack. So
like, if they'd come into the playground at school in like the 90s, would anyone have cared? Would they have gone like running away to the teacher because there's a stranger entered the playground?
Maybe in the UK. Maybe not in the US.
Yeah,
maybe?
I think in the UK nobody would have recognised Will.i.am in let's say 1998, but I think
I wasn't alive.
I think Will.i.am might have been recognisable on the street a little bit by the end of the 90s.
Yeah, he had his own record label and stuff by then, so surely.
He was definitely like on the up by the end of the 90s.
Well, I'll put it this way: there's no not recognising Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, true.
I was getting to that,
and you can take your pick, right? If you'd rather have Flavor Flav, a man who literally in the late 90s was given a terrible reality TV program.
Was that the late 90s? I thought that was later.
It might have been very early 2000s, to be fair, but he is a 90s celebrity where women fought to date him in a terrible version of The Bachelor, basically.
Yeah.
I remember catching an episode of that on like some Freeview channel, like a rerun, and just being astonished. Like these girls were like crying, and the ceremony was like he gave them all clocks, and the one that didn't, because Flavor Flav wears a giant clock around his neck, like and the one that was left at the end that didn't get a clock was the one that was getting sent home.
Yeah.
And they were sobbing as he was giving out these clocks. Great TV program. Great TV. They should bring that back, or they should just do a Love Island that's just with Flavor Flav.
Yeah, I remember there's a notorious episode where one of the women shits in a plant pot. Right? She shits in a plant pot at the start. I've got deja vu. I'm sure we brought this up before.
I don't know what I was expecting to say, but it wasn't that.
There's a notorious episode where one of the contestants has shat in a plant pot in his house, and they're all trying to figure out who did it. But like, she did it as they were assembling, so like it must have been the quickest.
Why? Why did she do this?
Because she desperately needed.
It wasn't like a protest. It was just
no. She just desperately needed a shite, and but they were setting up to do the big.
Is this real or is this
clock?
It's real. I found a clip.
I've just learned googling it that there's a YouTube channel called All Real that has every episode of every season of this on it.
Yeah.
I might have to watch it.
I know what I'm watching tonight.
I'm telling you, yeah. Kelsey just found it. It's like she shat in a plant pot, but Flavor Flav had to like become like Sherlock Holmes and figure out. It was like an Agatha Christie novel trying to figure out which one of them did it.
Because you couldn't give a clock to someone that had shat in a plant pot. To be fair.
Well, no, you'd be disrespecting the clock. But your celebrity is Snoop Dogg.
It's got to be, and Snoop is quintessential. Like his first, he was first on death row. He was on death row between 92 and 98. So that is when you had. That was when he was on the Chronic. That's when you had the Dog Pound and Doggy Style. That's when So that's Who Am I and Gin and Juice and all that sort of stuff. Murder Was the Case. 187 on Undercover Cop, etc., etc.
Okay.
And even now, like he said, an illustrious career since. But that period of Snoop is the period of Snoop, really.
Before he went all weird and did that Snoop Blind stuff and started hanging out with Martha Stewart, and I mean, he's still a treasure, but like that. But that was his peak. All right, okay. So we've got will.i.am, huge celebrity, possibly running out of roads by the end of the 90s to call him a 90s celebrity, but he definitely was famous, at least in the US, by the end of the 90s. And then you've got Tom. Who was yours again? I can't remember his name.
Zidane.
One of
the most famous footballers of all time.
That is my football ignorance. That is not.
He did the headbutt in the World Cup.
Yeah, that's not. It's not a slight on Zidane that I can't remember his name. It's just I'm very.
I do respect him for that. To be fair, what a way to end your career by twatting someone on the pitch in the World Cup.
Who did he headbutt?
I can't remember who it was.
Just another player, but like he was just angry.
It was a proper thrust with the head. It wasn't one of these modern headbutts where you
It was one of those things. Early days of internet, like I remember animated GIFs of people who'd made Zidane's headbutt look like a Street Fighter Super or a Final Fantasy Limit Break, where they put the UI. In fact, I've probably still got that GIF on my hard drive.
Yeah, so it's fairly big, but in celebrity terms, very limited to the world of football. Very limited to the world of
football.
Sport.
Is popular in most places, though.
Yeah, no, granted, but people know who Snoop Dogg is, and people know who Snoop Dogg is if they've never listened to a hip hop album in their entire life. Like everyone knows who Snoop Dogg is.
Zidane is he's up there with celebrities that most people, or certainly I don't know, Kelsey, maybe you haven't. Had you ever heard of Zinedine Zidane?
No, but when you said the headbutt, I knew.
There we go. So there's some familiarity there. I think he's one of those transcends all people because he's that famous, like Snoop Dogg.
And the images of the headbutt are iconic. I'm going to give credit to that. I think the guy said something about his sister. I think that's what it was.
I wonder when the headbutt was. The headbutt could have been. It probably wasn't in the 90s.
Oh, no, the headbutt was I want to say 2006?
It was 2006, yeah. He was already famous by then.
Headbutt. All right, okay. All right, fine. Nice. Okay. I would say this is an interesting topic, isn't it? Because if you're including, famous sports people as celebrities, which of course you do, you can just pick any FIFA from the 90s, can't you? You can just go, all right, FIFA 96. Wouldn't Ryan Giggs be in that? Isn't Ryan Giggs a bigger celebrity than will.i.am or Snoop Dogg?
No.
I need to pick something. So I'm going to base it entirely. So we're going to accept that all the games are good, right? I'm going to base it, it's probably going to annoy people, but I'm going to base it entirely on the celebrity, the quality of the celebrity, how well known the celebrity is, and how 90s the celebrity was. And I would say that Snoop Dogg is the most famous, the biggest celebrity, and in terms of the 90s, Snoop Dogg is Mr. 90s, probably represents the 90s more than Bill Clinton or the first Trade Center bombing. I don't know why that came up. But yeah, I would, let's put Def Jam NY in. I'll need to check the record. It might be the second time it's gone in, but...
deservedly so, if so. But Snoop is a man who, it's the most 90s thing in the moral panic about his music was such that several British newspapers ran a campaign to try to ban him from entering the UK.
Yeah.
Snoop alleges to this day still that the Queen intervened because Prince Harry liked his music, which I don't think is probably true. But even so,
but I would like to believe it. I would like to believe it. And
he actually tweeted when the Queen died, saying legitimately saying she looks after me when they were trying to ban me. So, you know,
I mean, well, I'm gonna just assume that story's true because I want to believe it. And Snoop would have felt, I think he would have felt betrayed by Britain because of that, because he loved Benny Hill and all that. He's always going on about, he's a bit of an Anglophile, isn't he? Snoop, in interviews and that, he always talks about.
Did you see that clip of him coming over to Scotland and someone starts playing Dr. Dre on the bagpipe? It was brilliant.
What's funny is he clearly didn't recognise that was what they were playing at the start, and then they got to a more recognisable bit, and he was like, "Oh,
yeah." There's like photos of him in a Celtic shirt.
He does that because I've seen him in Birmingham, and when I saw him in Birmingham, he was wearing an Aston Villa shirt. So he does tend to do that.
Yeah,
yeah.
But like,
that's also one of the best gigs I've been to in my life. It was amazing.
It's really good that he. I love that he picked the Celtic shirt and not a Rangers one. It's like, you know, he could have gone either way. But like, all right, okay. Listen, so Snoop Dogg's going in. Never mind the game. It's just Snoop Dogg's going into the VG247 Hall of Fame. Thank you very much for listening. Do join us again next week. Please leave us a 5-star review and all that good stuff. And we'll see if Tom picks Football Manager again.
I'm not
next
happy
week.
about how it's just happened, but it's fine. I'm just going to keep trying my best.
Has Football Manager actually won one?
I think it did once.
Yeah, it's gone in like at least once. But like, you know, you can't win every week with Football Manager, Tom. But
that is the story of Football Manager. You can't win every week.
Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Transport links are pretty great here in Scotland. Your cars and aeroplanes, therefore, knobs man. You want to cross the Firth of Tay, there's only one way, ScotRail. Every minute someone's taking ScotRail. Not curtain rails or humpback wheels, no ScotRail. Up, Glasgow Central and Rekeithing.